Shall we try this again? The subject is love. How to love again and fully engage in love after loss. I get it. Love hurts, especially when you've been dumped or rejected or you've lost somebody to death. I think that's one of the hardest things, is to lose somebody to death, because you always feel like they're still there, that you're still responsible for them, and that to re-engage in love again is to somehow violate your memory of them. I worked in hospice for many years, and I did a lot of hospice support phone calls, and I ran a support group for people with partner loss. And that was one of the biggest difficulties they had, was moving on into love again. Although I have to say that men tend to move on into new relationships sooner than women. It's not their fault. Really, men kind of depend on us. Men kind of depend on us. Oh, look at all those love. Thank you, thank you, thank you. They depend on us for our emotional support. And so when they lose their partner, they really are kind of like lost. And they often need to go back into a relationship again sooner. But women, they hang on longer. They hold on to that memory. And it's difficult for them, it's difficult for them to move forward. And, if you've been rejected or you've been divorced, you might move forward more quickly, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the results that you want. You may very well attract the same kind of problems you attracted in the first place. It takes work. Relationships take work. So maybe you feel like, well, you know what? I've had enough. I'm tired of the pain. I'm tired of the hurt. I actually feel better just being numb. I get it. It is hurtful, and the drama, and being over the drama, and just being in that place of numbness actually can feel pretty good. It can actually feel very soothing, like you don't ache anymore. And personally, I joined a spiritual group for years, and stayed out of intense relationships for years, because my needs, a lot of my emotional needs, are handled by that spiritual, ecstatic state. And then I would go back to New York, where I was living at the time. And springtime would come around, and I would see the couples in the park, and I would feel lonely, and I would feel that ache and that longing to be with somebody. And maybe I might satisfy myself by watching a romantic movie, or maybe I would avoid romantic movies because I didn't want to be reminded of that, or maybe I would go home and I would chant or meditate in order to let go of that feeling of being out of sorts, of not fitting in, of not belonging. And there's another side of it, and that is the creative side. What I've discovered is that when you are in relationship, when you are sexually active, you are stimulating your creative centers. You get inspired. You can inspire each other when you're in a positive relationship. This is one of the reasons I suggest that you might want to give love another chance. But before you do that, you may need to do some cleanup work. What I've discovered in the 25 plus years of working with people around grief and loss is that all the grief, all the hurt, goes all the way back to early childhood experiences. It's just the way it is. Hi, Abe, thanks for watching. It's just the way it is. We are social beings, and when we come into this world as little children, as little babies, we are hugely dependent upon our parents for our basic needs. And we have way greater needs than just simply our warmth and food and shelter and clothing. We actually need love. We need physical, tactile attention. We need hugging. We need to feel that we're safe, because darn, we're really dependent on these big, huge people. And if they don't give us the love, we do whatever we can to get it. And so what I have found in my 25 plus years of being a grief coach and psychosocial analyst and the psychosomatic therapist, what I found is that there are sort of four major wounds that we encounter in childhood that reverberate throughout our lives. One of them is abandonment. Now, it doesn't mean that they have to abandon you forever. When we're little children, between the ages of 0 and 3 to 5, we're extremely vulnerable. Our neural nets, our brains are beginning just forming. And so any kind of emotional trauma, no matter how tiny, can reverberate hugely throughout our lives. I had a client who developed pneumonia when she was only 2 years old, and she was separated from her parents only for a few days. And yet, even now, being alone is terrifying to her. And I experienced a similar problem. I bonded with my father when I was a child, not with my mother. And then when I was 2 years old, he was transferred to Japan. He was in the military. Now, we were not separated for the rest of my life, maybe a few months. But a few months in an infant's life is a huge amount of time. By the time we got reunited, I had given up on the bonding. Or else he'd given up, or he was too busy, whatever. We did not re-engage. I had already chosen to engage and bond with my sister, and she was only 2 years older. So I developed this pattern of pleasing. So that's one of the patterns, is pleasing. We want to be loved, so we develop a way of pleasing. The problem with it is that we are going to attract the same kind of people that we had in our childhood. People that have a hard time making a commitment. My father. My poor father, he lost his mother when he was 10 years old. And she was sick for most of his childhood. So what did that do to him? How did that impact him in terms of his ability to give love? You see, these issues kind of happen from generation to generation. So there's the people-pleasing and the abandonment. There's also being overly criticized. Now, if you, as a child, manage to find a way to please or placate that critical parent, then, you really develop that pattern of pleasing. But you also continue to attract that criticism. And so you develop this dynamic of criticism and trying to please and never being good enough. And that was actually the dynamic that I had with my mother. It wasn't her fault either. She had an overly critical mother. And we often repeat the patterns that our parents teach us about how to be a parent. So critical is one of them. Another one is neglect. So to a certain extent, I was neglected. What I mean by neglected is the parents are there, but they are involved in other things. Oh my gosh, I have a friend who, her parents literally took a vacation, a 2-week vacation, and left an 8-year-old child, her, home alone for 2 weeks on her own. I can't believe it. It's like unbelievable. But, they do not require proof a responsibility when it comes to having children. We do now for having pets, but not for children. And so children are subjected to all kinds of stuff. So then, of course, there's the abuse. One of my coaches calls it the path of the abused and the abandoned. I love that. What a term. The path of the abused and the abandoned. And so the child who is abused, the child could be literally at risk of survival. There could be violence, or it could just be sexual abuse. Now, sexual abuse is different from violence. It has its own flavor. In some ways, a child who is sexually abused may develop a certain capacity for feeling empowered, that somehow they had the capability of attracting that adult, and that adult was unable to control themselves. But they also are stuck with a lot of shame and self-judgment. Now, the one who is abused, physically abused, they may develop a lot of anger and controlling behavior. So they control the situation so that they can feel like they're safe. But when you bring that controlling into a relationship, you tend to pick partners that are weaker because that's safe. That feels safer. And then if you can control them in the sense of making a project out of them and molding them into what you think you need, well, it can work for a while. But eventually, what I have found in my experience as a psychosocial analyst is that they get tired of it. They eventually get tired of being controlled, of being a project, and they basically have two choices. One is that they finally get the wherewithal to walk away, or they get help in their relationship and there is a change in the dynamic, or they die. And I've had many, many women, clients, come to me with husbands in which the only way for them to get out was to die. What a horrible thing. Okay, so here we have the patterns. What I'm inviting you to do is to do something about it, is to get healing. Otherwise, inevitably, you are going to continue to attract the same kind of problem. It's just the way it is. You're going to attract the same dynamic unless you heal the wound. And that's what happened to me. I realized when I got involved with my current husband that if I did not deal with my emotional trauma, I was going to repeat the same problem, that I was going to trash the relationship. And so I did the work. I did the work because I really wanted to be in a relationship. So now you might ask yourself, well, why? What about that bliss of numbness? Why don't I just stay in that numbness? Why put in the effort? It's a lot of work to work on those early childhood wounds. And I don't want to go down there anymore. I don't want to deal with it. I'm okay the way I am. I'm fine. I'm okay. I heard somewhere that meant zero killed. That's how they use the term okay in, I guess it was the Vietnam War. But I've since realized that there are other derivations of the word okay. But it's an interesting phrase, okay. Is okay enough? Well, I'm going to share with you some reasons why it might not be enough. One of those reasons is that your body actually needs to connect with other people. Also, your spirit, who you really are, is hidden under those emotional wounds. It is your journey to work and heal those emotional wounds. It holds you back from stepping up fully into your life, from fully enjoying all that this world has to offer you. I mean, think for a moment. What would your life be like if you could love fully, if you could attract the person of your dreams? And what would that dream be like? Would that person be inspiring, intelligent, physically active, interested in music, fun to tell stories to? I have to tell you my own experience with my current husband. When I was working on my film series, the project I took on after my parents died, I still had a lot of emotional wounds. I felt inadequate. I didn't feel good enough. And every time I would get a criticism, and I got many, I would go down the rabbit hole and I would want to give up. And my husband would pick me up out of that hole and he would reassure me that I was okay. Now that's pretty amazing, isn't it? So think for a moment, what would it be like if you had somebody like that in your life that held the ground for you, that shared the expenses of living, that shared food with you, that shared your bed with you? Wouldn't that be really awesome? So, okay, you're saying, I'm too old. Well, I happen to believe that age is also a matter of mind. That when we think that we're not good enough, when we think that we're not worthwhile, when we think that we're not valuable, we are actually aging ourselves. We're telling ourselves, our bodies, that we're not good enough. So that in healing those early emotional wounds, those childhood wounds, we're actually helping our health. We're actually making ourselves more empowered. Not only in health, not only in love, but even in wealth. Okay, so maybe you're making a good amount of money. Maybe you're doing fine financially. But are you living your passion? What if you had somebody who had your back? What would you be doing? What if your heart was fully open? What if you truly felt empowered to do whatever you wanted? How would you be different? What would you be able to do? What would you be able to be? What would you be able to have? Just take a moment to think about that. How are you holding back from living your life fully? How are you holding back from sharing this world, with this world, who you really are? Do you even know who you really are? Most of us don't. Most of us have spent most of our lives trying to be somebody else, trying to be acceptable, trying to be worthy, trying to be liked, trying to be loved. What if you just loved yourself? What if you were enough? What if you could not fail because everything that you do is right? I invite you to have a conversation with me if you are intrigued by some of the things that I've shared today. There is a link over in the Facebook comments section where you can schedule a 15-20 minute call with me, find out how I work and how I can empower you, how I can help you to heal those early childhood wounds so that you can step into love, so that you can be more than just okay, so that you can live a vibrant, full, exciting life. I encourage you to let go of that concept that you're too old. Oldness is a state of mind. In the animal world, the animals die when they give up, when they decide that they're too old to try anymore. Trying, working, making effort is part of living. Seeing new problems, solving new problems, seeing new opportunities, being excited, being inspired, making a difference is what life is about. And love is part of that. Hi Jenny, thanks for watching. Welcome. I'm talking about living more than just okay, about inviting love into your life and what that brings to you, how that makes life more exciting, how it stimulates your creative center, how it gives you that support, that lower chakra stability that allows you to do things that are more risky, that are more scary, because somebody's got your back. So what, I think I've got some, whoops, I've lost my, hold on a second. Okay, so what if you were fearless? What if you were courageous? I mean, of course, we always have fears. I think it's really more about courage. And what is courage? Courage is the French word for heart. It is to act from the heart, not from blind bravery, but from the heart, from what's important to you. What if you stopped playing small? What if you imagined how much bigger life could be? What would you do? What could you imagine? Don't give up. That's what I suggest is don't give up. Keep living your life. We are only here for a small amount of time. Don't you want to live every moment on purpose, activated, actualized, excited in the process? So I leave you with this final thought, that everything that happened to you as a child, every trial and tribulation that you have experienced as you grew up and throughout your life, is all part of your journey. It provides you with experiences that you can share with your clients, that you can help other people to transform. I happen to believe that we are all here to uplift each other, that we are here to transform the planet, to take us all to a different level. And that's going to take a lot of work, because there are a lot of people out there that are struggling. My favorite statistic, sort of a disturbing statistic, 1 out of 6 American adults is on some kind of psychiatric drug, primarily antidepressants and tranquilizers. You know why? You know why I believe they are? It's because they're not living up to who they really are. They're not feeding their soul. They're not feeding their spirit. They're playing small. They're fitting in. They're living just okay. And by the way, that statistic does not account for all of those people who are self-medicating through drinking, drugs, overeating, overworking, playing on Facebook, playing computer games, watching TV. Do you want to go reach the end of your life and look back and say, I spend most of it in front of Netflix? Live your life. Enjoy the flowers. Enjoy love. Okay, that's it for today. Be brilliant, and bye for now.